Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for Z Nation. And what this video is going to be doing is doing my review for the latest episode, which was Day 1, which was the 14th episode, the penultimate episode to the conclusion of Season 2 of Z Nation. I can't believe it. I really feel like time has flown. This season has been amazing, and I can't wait to see how it concludes because there's a lot of big things coming up. But this episode, really took us back a little bit. It showed the survivors on some of the last legs of their journey, if you will. And, they were passing through Disneyland and kind of thinking back a little bit about things. So I'm going to let you guys know what happened. If you are not caught up with Z Nation and you do not want to be spoiled, then exit the video now and come back later, because otherwise you will be spoiled. Okay. So I found it very, metaphorical, if you will, that they, had them walking through the ruins of Disneyland, because the beginning of the episode really featured, the group's muscle cars breaking down and running out of gas, so they would have to complete the mission on foot. And they found that they were in California. They were amongst these ruins, a lot of rubble all over the place, cars, and it turns out that this was the former remnants of Disneyland, which, we're all familiar with Disneyland in California. And again, I really thought that it was, a very nice metaphor having them go through Disneyland on their final leg and having them think back to the first days of the apocalypse. Because when we think about Disneyland, we think about this great magical place. We think about, bringing out the inner kid in us, if you will. It reminds us a lot about things that we used to think about when we were kids, things that we thought were magical then, and then really reinvigorating that, bringing that out in us. And I think that that's kind of what happened with the survivors. They were walking through, and it kind of had them remembering times from the past. They've definitely been on a very long mission. It's been 4 years since the zombie apocalypse started, and it really brought out those inner feelings of, remembering what life was like before, and in some respects wanting that, but in other respects, leaving behind things that may not have been good for some of them. So basically, the episode was segmented into everybody getting their own little flashback. With Citizen Z, you found that he was actually a prisoner. Something that was very surprising. He was in, the prison gear, and he was in an interrogation room, and it turns out that he had been charged with espionage. Now, I don't know if it necessarily said what he did. I don't know if he leaked various documents. We know that he's a little bit of a hacker, somebody who can use a computer very well. So it's very possible that it may have been related to that, but they were charging him with espionage. But the NSA came in and basically made him a deal, that they would free him, that they wouldn't send him to prison if he would come work for the NSA at Northern Lights. And they revealed to him that zombies were part of the reason, for why they needed him and things that were coming up, and that's why they needed people like him. Because the guy writes on a piece of paper and slipped it to him, what was going on. He couldn't even show his attorney what was on the paper, so it really prompted him to accept the job, and that's how he got to be in Northern Lights. Now, with Warren, we saw her as a soldier. She was a lieutenant at in the National Guard, and I believe it was in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. And we saw her, trying to respond to some of the terrible things that were going on, and it turned out that her squad basically got massacred by zombies. And the ambulance crashed. There was a zombie in the back on the gurney, and then there was a zombie ambulance driver that basically goes in and bites all of the people that she knew. And that resulted in them dying, of course, and she had to kill them. We have Doc, who actually used to be a drug counselor. He was inside of an office. He had his own office. He was mentoring somebody who had been clean for 5 days, and what ended up happening was Doc goes out to deal with the situation in another room where this man with anger management issues was attacking this woman, and Doc came in and basically helped diffuse the situation. And because of that, and because of where he was at different times, he missed zombies attacking him and was able to basically get out and fight. But we saw him struggle with what was really going on, but then he eventually overcame his fears and continued on. Then you have Addie, who was actually at a hockey game. And this is where she meets Mac. So we got Mac to make an appearance on Z Nation since his death. He was a hockey player, and it featured a little bit of him as well. They got off the ice, they saw there was a zombie in the stands, and the place just basically fell into chaos. And him and his friend were back in the stage, if you will, fighting. And Addie ends up coming back there and saving Mac, and the two of them really, find that they're a big fighting force. They're fighting off zombies just like they were doing on, the show. And they kind of figured, hey, we should stick together because, we work well together. And it leads to the moment where Addie says that she has a mother and her brother at home. So it leads into that story. While we don't see it, it really leads into the story that we hear about Mac and Addie going to the house and finding them both as zombies, unfortunately. So we got that perspective as well. We find out that 10,000 was out in the woods fishing with his father. It was a hunting fishing expedition. And we saw somebody who, was not this big fighter yet. Somebody who was a teenager, if you will, maybe even as young as 12 or 13, maybe even a little bit younger. I could tell that he was a little bit shorter than he is now, and a lot more like a kid would be. And he ends up, running away from the zombies and knocks himself out, and miraculously, falls into this, hole, if you will, so the zombies run right past him. And then he's saved by his father, who, in a sense, gives him his first rifle because it's on the back of this zombie. So that's really how 10,000 got his supplies. And, from there, it basically helped him become this big warrior that he has become. But some of the people's stories was not, they were not necessarily in good positions before the apocalypse started anyways. So really, the zombie apocalypse didn't really change some people's, fortunes, if you will. Like Vasquez, we unfortunately picked up right where his wife and daughter were killed by a scorpion. He was at the funeral home for the service, and some, funeral director came in, told him he could take all of his time, and all of a sudden, Vasquez starts to see that the caskets are moving, and, he hears some noises, wondering, if there's rats in the place, and it turns out that no, unfortunately, it's, of course, the zombie apocalypse, and the funeral director is a zombie. But what makes it even worse is that it turns out that Vasquez's wife and daughter in the caskets are also zombies. So it kind of changes a little bit of the perspective of, exactly what can the zombie virus hit, because I'm assuming, based on the circumstances, that when the wife and daughter were killed, unfortunately, that they didn't come back as zombies. So it really set up this idea that the zombie virus can even, like people that had died even earlier, from other circumstances, that their bodies could still get up and come, after people. So unfortunately, he had to witness his wife and daughter coming out of the caskets as zombies, and that has to be absolutely terrible. We can only imagine if somebody would dream something like that, but for Vasquez to actually experience it and presumably kill his wife and daughter as zombies off screen, he may have done that, he may not, we didn't see it, but it can be presumed that he probably did. It's bad enough having to watch them get murdered in front of him in the first place, but the fact that he then had to see them as zombies, just absolutely terrible and very unfortunate, and it really did show some of the terrible sides. And then finally you have Murphy. My apologies. You have Murphy's story. A lot of us knew that Murphy had been a prisoner before the apocalypse had started. And of course, the episode is flashing back and forth between the present and the past for each individual person. And what you find with Murphy is, we find him when it gets to nighttime, him really reflecting on his life, and kind of really wondering, why me? Why did it have to be me? Which is something that we've seen with Murphy throughout the show. He's constantly questioned this idea of him being the savior of the zombie apocalypse, and it really wasn't something that he wanted. He would have rather preferred that he'd been doing something else, that maybe he had even been dead. He kind of wishes, he begs the question. He says, when do I get my mercy? Really feeling that, his life really hasn't been something that was worth living to him, and perhaps that death would be something that he would welcome. And we find out that he was in prison, of course. He was playing a card game with some other prisoners. And it turns out that he was, well, according to him, now whether he was lying or not, we don't know. According to him, he was in prison for postal fraud. He had been a part of a company that went under because of the recession, and he had done some fraudulent things, according to him, which would make sense because you really kind of get that vibe of Murphy being this swindler, somebody who is manipulative, somebody who would, steal, lie, do whatever he needs to do to, make it. So it does kind of fit with his profile. And of course, somebody gets shanked in the prison yard and everything just goes to heck. And then it turns out, of course, that the person that was stabbed comes back as a zombie, and various prisoners and guards are getting attacked in the yard. And Murphy sees that the gate is open, so he runs for it. And while other prisoners are coming that way, he shuts the gate on them so nobody else can get out, and everybody gets eaten. So we see, this trait of Murphy's, is present in him even before a lot of the zombie apocalypse started. So when we get back to the present and we really see what's going on with him, Warren comes in to check on him, and, Murphy basically says, that he really doesn't want to do this. He admits that he has his fears. He admits he's afraid of feeling this pain and that they're gonna hurt him while he's at this lab. And Warren basically gives him the message that he needs to man up, that each one of them has really experienced their own pains and sufferings in the zombie apocalypse. And while Murphy's also had his fair share, this is really something that, he just needs to do. It's gonna hurt no matter what, but, he needs to think about being the savior of the zombie apocalypse, even though he doesn't want to be. It's something that has been placed upon him, and hopefully that he will rise up to the occasion when the time comes. That's really a question that a lot of us may be wondering as we're going into this last episode. Will Murphy actually go through with the plan, or is something else going to happen? So the way that the episode ends, is two fronts. One, something that Citizen Z was doing at Northern Lights was he was trying to, access the satellites, and it turns out somebody hacked him. And when he looks, he realizes that it's somebody. The location is in Hawaii, and somebody had basically hacked into the system and had been tracking Operation Bite Mark. Now, many of us may be wondering, well, who is that? And I'm very curious to see who it is as well. But I think that there's a very good possibility that it might be those rich people. I forget what that world that they referred to was, but I think that it's very possible that it may be that other group that's been referred to in that episode with the aliens, when they found that map, and then you heard that reference from a Scorpion about those rich people. I think that it's them. I think they have the resources to do that, and I think that season 3 may feature them. And maybe the end of season 2, we'll see. But Warren and Vasquez end up going in alone to the location, and the location seems to be a little, out of place. It looks more like a restaurant than, a lab where somebody's trying to find a cure, and that's really what it is. It is a restaurant. And they go inside, and there's this woman inside who's, been standing at the counter. And everybody's like, oh, this is a little weird. Hey, how you doing? A very awkward greeting. and Vasquez sees that she has a gun and tells her to put it up on the counter, which she does. But she has a hidden gun under the counter. So we really have to wonder, who are these people? Are they these, the rich people in Hawaii that maybe people were referring to? Is she really somebody that is working for Operation Bite Mark? Is she going to call in the troops? Are things going to be taken care of? Or, are they somebody else? And are they going to help or are they not? Big questions coming up. And the preview is really, really exciting for the next episode. We are going to see the return of Lorena and some of the Zeros. So it is clear that they were not done, that we are going to see them again. Will they have carry over into season 3? Maybe, maybe not. But we're going to have to watch and find out, and I cannot wait. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, don't be afraid to leave them. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for watching.